The Crypto Markets Update is brought to you by KuCoin, the best place to find the next crypto gem.
Yeah, Bitcoin prices are kind of moving sideways right now, but what do the charts say? Joining us now to discuss the crypto markets is Fairlead Strategies founder and managing partner, Katie Stockton. Welcome, Katie.
Thanks so much, Lawrence. You too. Thank
you. So you sent us a chart. It's got a lot of things on it. So let's break it down a little bit here. You see support at around 38 and resistance around 45, correct?
That's right. So the 38,000 level comes from that chart, which has a shaded area on it, and that's called the cloud model. It's a very, very helpful trend following gauge that has particular relevance for anything that trades with deep global liquidity like cryptocurrencies. So we are focusing on the bottom bet. Go ahead.
I do want to ask about the cloud, actually, before you continue. What exactly is that cloud? It wasn't coffee that spilled on the chart, correct?
Yeah, it's based on, instead of moving averages, which is really a common source for most technical indicators, it's based on midpoints of price. So essentially, you're taking a high-low price range and taking the midpoint, and you're projecting it forward by certain parameters. Now, the idea is that you're getting a full look or complete look at the trend, but also support and resistance with a forward-looking element of about 26 periods. For those of you that know the technical indicators out there, the parameters for the cloud model are very, very similar to the MACD indicator, which is another common trend following tool. And we think that's based on the market calendar. So these parameters tend to hold value because of the market calendar. So we're watching it as a gauge of support right now. As you can see, price is above that cloud model, which shows the support around 38,000.
And so it seems like you also have the Fibonacci numbers here, and right now retracement about, it looks like a 50% retrace. It's at about close to 51,000, and you see that as resistance, and then 61.8 is 27 and change, 27,000 and change. So what's that about here? Where are you coming up with that?
Yeah, we're driving two different Fibonacci retracements on this chart. And the one that you highlight first is a resistance level around 51,000. If we were to see the recent highs of about 45,000 cleared, that would, of course, be a positive catalyst for Bitcoin, exacerbate the momentum behind the coin, and that would be the targeted level from that breakout. We've already seen the equivalent of that cloud-based support on the daily chart exceeded to the upside. So we do have a bit of a minor breakout, even though if you look over the past, say, 2 months or so, it looks more sideways. Based on that daily cloud, we do actually have a breakout in Bitcoin, which is why we've been bullish short term. It's really important in this market to reconcile time horizons. The reason we show the other Fibonacci retracement level of roughly 27,000, that's a support level, a secondary support level. So if we were to see that cloud-based support around 38,000 taken out, that would suggest that there's increased downside risk. So it's a bit tenuous in here because we do have a loss of long-term upside momentum behind Bitcoin alongside the equity market. We've really seen risk assets suffer that loss of long-term upside momentum. And because of that, while we're bullish short term, we have to be a little bit more nimble when we're trading these cryptocurrencies, a little bit more sensitive than average to the short-term and intermediate-term gauges that we use. So we always want to make sure to have those gauges on our side. And right now they are to the upside, but we'd be very respectful of any loss of short-term upside momentum and, of course, of any breakdown.
Katie, I was wondering if you could talk a bit about Ether. We see Ether slightly up this morning compared to Bitcoin, which is slightly down. And we have an impending proof of stake merge happening. What do you see for the future for Ether?
When I think about Ether, I think of it as sort of the risk on versus the defensive play in Bitcoin. So you do tend to see Ether outperform in general when Bitcoin is trending higher and vice versa. So it's really sort of a sentiment takeaway in that we're seeing more risk on from Ether. That higher beta nature of Ether makes it somewhat more appealing when we do have a bullish bias. So we have seen support hold there as well for Ether, that the equivalent level to that 38,000 Bitcoin is about 2,350 for Ether. And the initial hurdle is roughly 3,000, above which we're targeting 3,500. So we're really seeing a very similar setup in absolute terms, but in relative terms, if we do see some upside follow through in absolute terms, we would expect to see Ether outperform.
And what do you see about the volumes? Because right now, crypto markets have been in a wait and see mode. And so in terms of that, how are you interpreting, what we might see in the next 3 months or so?
It's really very normal in sort of a sideways trending market to see volumes contract. It's consolidation. Think about it as like a tug of war between the buyers and sellers and a period of indecisiveness. So I think it's that indecisiveness that's reflecting itself in the lighter volumes, the less decisive trending moves. And then it just becomes a question as to whether that consolidation phase is reconciled to the upside or to the downside. As said, we do think it will be reconciled to the upside with our short-term bullish bias. So we see it as a function of that, and we would expect with any kind of breakout, let's say above 45,000 Bitcoin, we would expect that volumes would come back into the market at least temporarily. And we say temporarily in part because of that long-term loss of upside momentum that's shared by the S&P 500 index, which of course is also rallying pretty nicely here. We do expect equities to see additional upside in the coming weeks alongside cryptocurrencies. And we've even seen treasury yields resume their uptrend. So it is what we believe to be a risk on tape, but really just from a short to intermediate term perspective within the context of that loss of long-term momentum.
So Katie, let's bottom line this for the folks at home who might not be so technically analytical. Where do you see Bitcoin going over the near term and intermediate term?
Well, the indicators that I track, so that includes that cloud model and a couple of trend following gauges, including the stochastic oscillator that was pictured on that chart. We have a nice sort of posture in those intermediate term gauges. The takeaway is a little bit more decisive in terms of time frame. So the indicators are supporting upside over the next several weeks. So let's call it 6 to 8 weeks perhaps of upside for Bitcoin. I don't think it will necessarily be at a very strong pace, but if we were to see above 45,000, the targeted level becomes 51,000. That isn't necessarily a stopping point, but it would be a nice upside objective.